All right, let's go take a look at how to import data into SAS. First, let's talk about what a comma-separated file or a CSV file is. Typically, a CSV file has a header that describes the columns or variables of my data. And then each observation or row in my data set is separated by commas. Pretty simple and straightforward. You can import this into Excel. We're going to show you how to import this into SAS. To do that, SAS has a procedure called proc import. It takes in a file name and a ref file, which is just the reference to this CSV file. The DBMS tells you how it is delimited or what engine to use. The out equals tells you where you want to write the output data set to. Often you'll get an error or a warning if you don't say replace, if it is into a permanent location. Get names tells it to use the header of the file as the variable names. Finally, guessing rows guesses the data types of your data set by reading in a certain number of rows. By default, it's 10 or 20 rows, something of that nature. Often on larger data sets, it's insufficient to correctly guess the data types for you. I'm lazy, so I like to use this feature. And so I set it pretty high. And so it'll read the first, in this case, 2,000 rows to guess the data types. Finally, I'll look at use proc contents to look at the contents of the file and specifically the structure of the file. Great, here we are in SAS Studio. And in my week 1 data folder, I have a data set called Amazon. And here's how I define my reference file. I've got my proc import set up, and so we're just going to highlight that and run it. Let's go take the log real quickly. Interestingly enough, you'll notice in the log it doesn't say proc import. The log actually, what SAS does, it actually generates a data step program to import the file. Proc import, all it is a code generator. It's a very useful code generator, but if you really want to get down into the nitty-gritty of how to import complex files, you then would use data step. And here's the example data step that it pulls in. Finally, you can look at the number of records read and the number of records written out and the number of variables. You can look at the output of the data. You can see the formats. Let's go look at proc contents. What's in this data set, or what's the structure of this data set? Proc contents tells us, hey, it's a work data set. It has 500 observations, 7 variables. Tells us the length of each row. That can be useful. In SAS, you can pre-sort the data and you can compress it, which is nice when you have large files that you're dealing with. Finally, look at the formats here. You'll notice that date is stored as a number. I think I've mentioned that before, but SAS only has 2 types of data, character and numeric. Use formats to display things like dates. Here it's year, month, day, 10 dot. Let's go take a look at what that actually looks like real quick. And you'll see it's a 4-digit year dash month dash day. And if you sum the number or count the number of characters up, that'll equal 10 characters. All right. Now you give it a go. Upload the Google spreadsheet. It's an Excel file to your week 1 folder. Use proc import to import the file. Change the dataset name from work.import to Google. You'll also need to change the DBMS and potentially some other options, but give it a try. Once you've imported it, take a look at the log. How many observations did you import? How many variables? Ultimately, what was the DBMS engine that you used? Finally, here's some references. Here's a great paper on proc import with a twist, as well as the import documentation.